Sagittarius, you won't like this. Someone chooses you, and you'll live a wild love. Sagittarius, you may not like what you're about to hear, but your soul already knows it's time. This isn't a fluffy prediction. It's a message that touches the place inside you that once swore never to love that deeply again. Because someone is choosing you, not for who you've pretended to be, but for the truth you tried to keep hidden. And this time it's not someone new. It's an old soul, a familiar presence, one that never really stopped orbiting your heart, even after all the silence. This isn't about rekindling a fantasy. It's about something far more powerful. A spiritual shake that reveals the light you've built after breaking. A love that doesn't return to heal your wounds, but to witness who you've become. So take one slow breath. Stay, because in a few more moments something in you will awaken. A memory you never gave language to. A love that never got to finish its sentence. And you may feel your heart stir, not with need but with recognition. And if your soul is already whispering, I knew it would come back but not like this, then this message was always meant to find you. If your spirit feels seen like this video, subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom and share it with someone whose wild love is no longer about chaos, but about clarity. Because what's returning now is not just a person. It's a part of you that's finally ready to be chosen, with no mask, no fear, and no need to prove. Gate 1. The one who left never stopped choosing you. Sagittarius, you've always carried your heart like an arrow, bold, swift, honest. But even arrows get lost in the wind. Even fire signs dim themselves when the person they loved didn't know how to stay. You once gave your heart with the kind of honesty that only a few are brave enough to offer, and you thought that would be enough. But when they walked away, without explanation, without resolution, it wasn't just a breakup. It was a fracture to your soul's belief in love's fairness. You told yourself you moved on. You buried the story. You packed it into a box labeled lesson, and tried to live as if it was finished. But the soul knows what the heart tries to silence. And lately, something old has started to stir again. Not in loud messages or dramatic returns, but in subtle echoes. A dream that makes you wake up breathless. A familiar scent on a stranger that brings you to the edge of tears. A quiet knowing that someone somewhere is thinking of you. You don't want to admit it because you've worked so hard to heal. But love, true love, doesn't vanish. It softens, it hums, it waits. And now that waiting is ending. Sagittarius, the one who walked away never stopped choosing you. They just didn't know how to hold what you gave. When you loved them, you didn't do it halfway. You didn't dip your toe into safety. You dove into the fire of connection, handed them the map to your soul and said, "Here, all of me." And they trembled, not because they didn't feel it, but because they did. They saw in your eyes something they weren't yet ready to receive. Unconditional presence. You weren't asking them to become someone else. You simply saw who they could be, and that scared them more than rejection ever could. Because you didn't just love their image. You loved their becoming. You touched their potential like it was already real. And they weren't ready to be seen like that. So they left. Maybe suddenly. Maybe slowly. Maybe in silence. And you were left with 1,000 unanswered questions. You wondered what you did wrong. Why it wasn't enough. But Sagittarius, it wasn't about you not being enough. It was about them not yet knowing how to be loved without armor. And now, as life has taught them lessons you never needed to deliver, they're remembering. Not the dramatic highs, not the passionate chaos, but the stillness, the steadiness, the quiet magic of being seen without needing to explain. They've tried to find it in other places, other hands, other homes. But no matter how far they go, they can't unfeel the way you made them feel. You were the soul that saw them in their in-between. The one who didn't run from their unspoken pain. The one who offered love not as a transaction, but as a reflection. And now they can't escape it. They don't even know why you appear in their thoughts again. But their soul does. And maybe your soul does too. Because even though you've done the work, healed, grown, let go, there's a part of you that never fully turned away. Not because you're stuck, but because you still believe in what's real. You haven't become bitter. You've simply become whole. And it's from this wholeness that a new kind of choice begins. Sagittarius, you are no longer the one who waits. You are the one who gets to choose. And if they return now, it's not to test your growth. It's to witness it. They're not coming back with excuses. They're coming with eyes that finally see what they once couldn't face. And the question is no longer, will they choose me? The question is, do I want to open the door? There's a power in being loved, but there's an even deeper power in realizing you don't need to be chosen to feel worthy. That power? You've claimed it. You've cultivated it. And that is exactly why they are drawn to you now. Because you've become the light you once hoped someone else would protect. But even still, take a breath. Feel what stirs. Is there a part of you that softens at the thought of them? Not from longing but from memory? So don't judge it. You are not weak. You are not regressing. You are simply honoring a soul connection that never broke, only paused. Because not every love that leaves has truly ended. Some loves go quiet so they can be reborn. And if this is one of those loves, Sagittarius, then you have every right to step back into it as someone new. Not to repeat the past. Not to lose yourself again. But to finally be loved in the way you always deserved. You are no longer a background character in someone else's journey. You are the destination. The lighthouse. The place someone's soul still seeks when they're finally ready to come home. Not to the old version of love, but to the new version of you. And if this time they show up with eyes of clarity and a heart not full of promises but presence, then maybe, just maybe, it isn't about rewriting the past. It's about writing what was never given a chance to begin. Date 2. This love is not a reward, it's a sacred rebirth. Sagittarius, love has never been about possession for you. You don't cling. You don't control. You've always known that love in its truest form must come from freedom. But even so, when you love fiercely. You love fully. You love in a way that leaves no part of you untouched. And that's why it has always hurt more when it ended. Because you didn't just lose a person. You lost the part of yourself that believed you could be fully seen and still be held. But now, something else is rising. The love that's coming toward you isn't a prize for surviving heartbreak. It's not the good thing arriving after you've done the work. It's not a trophy. It's a transmutation. A new way of loving that is only possible because you allowed yourself to fall, to grieve, to grow, and to rise alone. You are not being rewarded, Sagittarius. You are being recognized by someone who this time meets you in your light, not just your wounds. A soul that doesn't ask to complete you, but to walk beside the wholeness you've built on your own. It may be someone from your past. It may be someone you've never met. But either way, the love that's approaching is nothing like what you've known before. It doesn't enter through chaos. It doesn't arrive screaming promises or wearing a mask of certainty. It doesn't demand an answer. It simply shows up, soft, unwavering, unafraid of your power, and quietly certain of your worth. And here's the paradox. This love is only possible because you no longer need it to be. Sagittarius, this is a soul event. A spiritual awakening through relationship. A ritual of returning to the part of you that once stopped dreaming. The part that closed its heart to avoid losing itself again. This love doesn't come to fix the cracks. It comes to pour light into them, to illuminate how far you've come. You once believed that to be loved you had to be less. Quieter. Easier. More agreeable. You shrunk parts of yourself to fit into someone else's story. You wore masks not because you were fake but because you were tired of being misunderstood. And now, that mask doesn't fit anymore. The person who's being drawn to you now isn't looking for a version of you they can tame. They're arriving to meet the wild truth of who you really are. The visionary, the teacher, the firewalker who kept going even when the road vanished beneath their feet. And that love, Sagittarius, will not ask you to apologize for your strength. It will marvel at it. It will not run from your emotional fire. It will warm itself by it. It will not try to shape you. It will learn from you. Because this time love doesn't come to take. It comes to honor. But you must be ready. Because this love won't feel like safety in the way you once craved it. It will feel like truth. And truth, while beautiful, often shakes the foundation of everything we once used to protect ourselves. This love will ask you, can you stay open even now? Can you let go of the belief that love must look a certain way? Can you receive not because you're desperate but because you're deserving? You'll know it's real because it won't arrive to fill your emptiness. It will arrive because you are already full. And that fullness will invite in a kind of sacred partnership that doesn't build itself on fantasy, but on presence. On eye contact that doesn't flinch. On late-night silences that feel like home. On mornings where nothing is said, but everything is understood. This love will not arrive with grand gestures. It will enter like breath, soft, steady, and utterly necessary. You've waited long enough for someone to choose you. Now the universe is asking, will you choose yourself enough to receive a love that doesn't need to chase or convince, but simply belongs? This kind of love doesn't shout your name across a crowded room. It whispers your soul's truth in moments you forgot how to speak it. It doesn't knock loudly on your door. It waits patiently in the garden of your growth, knowing that when you are ready, you'll come outside with no mask, no armor, and no need to prove a thing. And when you do, it will already be there, smiling, not because you've become perfect, but because you've finally become free. In Buddhism, there is a teaching. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. But in the realm of love, it is often reversed. When the soul is ready, the mirror arrives. Sagittarius, this is your mirror. This love will not look the way you imagined, but it will feel like a memory that was always meant to return. Not to remind you of what you lost, but to show you what you never had to lose again. So breathe deeper now. Place your hand on your heart. Ask yourself, not from longing but from truth, am I ready to love without clinging? Am I ready to welcome someone not to complete me, but to witness me? Am I ready to stand in my light and allow someone to meet me there? If your heart answers yes, even in a whisper, then this love has already begun. Gate 3. The soul they could never forget. Sagittarius, there's a truth most people never say aloud, but carry with them like a quiet ache. The people who love us most deeply often don't realize what they had until it's gone. And when they finally do, it's not the grand moments they remember. It's the subtle ones. The stillness. The warmth. The way your presence asked nothing but gave everything. And that's why they can't forget you. Not because you were perfect. Not because you did all the right things. But because in a world addicted to attention and noise, you loved like a sacred fire, calm, wild, enduring. You were the first taste of safety in a heart that had only known survival. You didn't demand they be whole. You loved them while they were still in pieces. And that kind of love doesn't fade. It marks the soul. It builds a home inside them they may try to leave, but never stop returning to. They don't talk about it. Maybe not to anyone. Maybe not even to themselves. But you live in them. In memories that arrive when the world grows still. In songs that make them flinch without knowing why. In gestures they now associate with tenderness. In a laugh they hear from someone else that doesn't quite echo yours. They remember your steadiness. Your unshakable presence. Your eyes when you listen like the whole world could wait. You didn't perform your love. You became it. And that made you unforgettable. You never loved them to be remembered. You loved them because you saw a light inside them that even they couldn't see yet. You reflected back the version of them they were too afraid to believe in. And in doing so, you changed the course of their becoming. But here's what they didn't realize then. Loving someone like you comes with a cost. Because once they felt your presence, they will never be satisfied with shallow connection again. They'll keep searching for something that feels like you, and every time they try to replicate it, they'll come up short. Because you, Sagittarius, didn't give love from ego. You gave from essence. You didn't just touch their skin. You touched their timeline. And now, in the stillness of their nights or the pause between breaths, they hear your name. Not spoken out loud, but whispered through the way life keeps circling back to you. They wonder what would have happened if they had stayed. If they had been ready. If they hadn't been afraid of how much you saw. But even if they never say it, they know. They know that the love you gave wasn't ordinary. And here's the deepest part. They know they'll never find it again. You were the mirror they weren't brave enough to stand in front of. The invitation they declined because they didn't believe they were worthy. And now, years or lifetimes later, they finally understand. It wasn't too much. It was exactly right. And they weren't ready for it. But you were. And you still are. That's why they can't forget you. Because your love wasn't conditional. It wasn't filtered. It didn't ask for credentials. You didn't need them to have it all together. You just needed them to be real. And when they couldn't be that, when they couldn't stay, you didn't chase. You retreated with dignity. With fire in your chest and tears in your eyes, yes. But you never begged. And that too left a mark. Because when someone walks away from a soul who would have stayed through the storm, they carry that absence forever. Sagittarius, the truth is, you were a spiritual threshold in someone's life. A portal they crossed, even if only briefly. And even if they tried to return to the life they had before, nothing felt the same. You are not someone people get over. You are someone they come to understand, slowly, quietly, painfully, after they've already left. And even if they've built a new life, even if they appear content, even if they never say a word, their soul is still tangled with yours. Not in a way that keeps you trapped, but in a way that reminds them of what could have been, had they been ready. But here's what matters most. You don't need them to come back to feel whole anymore. You've done the work. You've built your life. You've become the love you once gave. And that's the most profound thing of all. The same light they couldn't hold is now the flame that lights your own path forward. So if they do return, it will not be to complete you. It will be to witness what they once overlooked. It will be to stand before the version of you who doesn't beg to be chosen, because now you choose yourself. You no longer seek validation in their eyes. You see clearly with your own. And that clarity, it will either draw them into their next chapter, or it will be your final release. Either way, Sagittarius, you win. Because what you gave was never wasted. What you loved was never in vain. And what lives in you now is not a ghost of an old love, but the proof that even after loss, you still burn with the same radiant light. That's why they can't forget you. Because no matter how far they travel, how many people they meet, how many lives they live, you were the only one who saw their soul and stayed, even if only for a while. And nothing, not time, not silence, not distance, can unwrite that. Gate 4. A wild love that melts the mask. Sagittarius, you've been carrying something inside for a long time. An inner knowing, a restless ache, a quiet longing that no words have ever been able to fully express. You've danced through life wearing a crown of confidence, and you've often been the one others turn to for strength, guidance, even adventure. But behind the laughter, behind the brilliance, behind the wild fire in your eyes, there is a part of you that's been silently asking, will someone ever see all of me and stay? You've been brave in love, unafraid to give your whole heart, to leap even when you had no guarantee of being caught. But too many times that bravery was met with silence, with confusion, with people who only saw your surface, not your soul. So over time, piece by piece, you learned to hide. You didn't stop loving, but you began to measure it. You didn't stop giving, but you started to protect what parts of you others could reach. You told yourself that independence was enough, that freedom was your truest companion, and maybe it has been. Maybe it always will be. But still, in the deepest places of your heart, there remains a part of you that longs not just to run wild, but to be met there. Not to be tamed, not to be fixed, not to be defined, but to be felt, held, chosen without you needing to explain a single thing. And that part of you, it's awakening again. This awakening isn't soft. It doesn't arrive like a love song drifting through the air. It doesn't come with flowers or perfect timing or even logic. It comes like a storm, like a gust of cosmic wind tearing through the carefully constructed walls you built to stay safe. It comes like an old flame that never went out, even when the world convinced you it should have. It comes not to destroy you, but to break the illusion you've had to carry, that you must always be strong, always be wise, always be fine. It comes to shake you, but this time it won't shatter you, because you've done something extraordinary. You've built a home within yourself that even heartbreak couldn't burn down. And now the universe knows you're ready, not to be rescued, but to be seen. The love that's approaching is not small. It's not polite or manageable. It's not the kind that blends into your life without causing change. It's the kind that reveals what has been hiding. It's the kind that unlocks a door you almost forgot you closed. It's not a return to innocence, but a return to essence. The essence of who you were before the world told you to become more reasonable, less emotional, more logical, less vulnerable. It is wild, not in chaos, but in clarity. Wild in how it invites you to let go of control and step fully into the raw, divine, magnificent truth of your being. This love won't ask you to shrink. It won't ask you to dim your fire to fit someone else's comfort zone. It won't require you to contort into roles you've outgrown. It will ask only one thing. Will you let go of the mask you've worn to survive? You didn't choose the mask. It was given to you by circumstance, by hurt, by the moments where your tenderness was met with rejection. You learned to smile when your heart was breaking. You learned to walk away before they could abandon you. You learned to laugh too loudly so they wouldn't hear the quiet cracking inside. And that mask served its purpose. It protected your spirit. It allowed you to keep moving, keep building, keep becoming. But Sagittarius, the time for armor has passed. Because now someone is arriving or returning, not to test you, but to touch the parts of you that have gone untouched for far too long. They aren't looking for your persona. They don't care about your achievements. They are being drawn magnetically, inexplicably to your essence. And the question now is, can you let yourself be seen? Can you love not as a way to prove your worth, but as a way to express your truth? Can you be loved without having to explain, impress, or manage? The love that is coming won't fit into your old definitions. It will challenge your rhythm. It will ask you to stay present, even when you want to flee. It will stir up the emotions you thought you buried. But it will also do something else, something you've secretly longed for. It will ask nothing of you except your presence. No performance. No perfection. Just your being. And if you allow it, this love will meet you at the exact frequency of your soul. Not your image. Not your history. Not your past heartbreak. But the frequency that lives in the center of your fire. The one that knows you're worthy, even when you're messy, tired, uncertain, or afraid. You may feel scared. That's natural. Fear often follows the sacred. You may want to close off to pretend you're too busy, too evolved, too unbothered to care. But Sagittarius, this is your threshold. Not just of a relationship, but of becoming. This love is not coming to complete you. It's coming because you already are. You've made it here with a heart that still beats wildly, that still believes, that still dreams. And the universe is responding to that belief, not with fantasy but with embodiment. With the kind of love that does not make promises it cannot keep. With the kind of love that holds you in silence and says, you don't need to do anything else. You're already enough. There will be moments when you want to retreat. When your old patterns rise. When the ghosts of past disappointments try to pull you back into cynicism. But this time you'll have a choice. A real one. You can step forward, not in blind trust but in self-trust. Not in naivety but in spiritual maturity. And when you do, you'll discover something breathtaking. The love you've been seeking has always been echoing within you. This other soul, they are just the resonance, the mirror, the sacred reminder. And perhaps they've been carrying their own mask too. Perhaps they've been hiding, aching, wondering if they'd ever meet someone who could sit with their rawness without flinching. And when they see you, not just your face but your fire, they'll know you are that soul. And maybe they're the one you once loved. Or maybe they're someone new entirely. Either way, they are not arriving by accident. Because Sagittarius, wild love is not random. It is orchestrated by the threads of destiny that we cannot see, but deeply feel. It shows up not when we're perfectly ready, but when we're finally real. And that is what you are now. Real, whole, unmasked, willing. This love may not be easy. It will ask you to soften. It will ask you to let go of the story that says you're better off alone. It will ask you to allow someone in, not through your defenses but through your truth. But if you do, if you choose to meet it, to let it unfold, to let it awaken you, you won't lose yourself. You'll find the part of you that's been waiting quietly at the edge of your soul, whispering, I still believe in love. I still believe in something wilder, deeper, freer than anything I've known. Because love like this doesn't ask you to sacrifice your freedom. Celebrates it. It doesn't demand control. It dances in trust. It doesn't arrive to tame the fire in you. It becomes the wind that lets it rise higher. And when you finally stand in that space with your heart unhidden, your fears unguarded, your past accepted, you'll realize that this is not the end of anything. This is your beginning. Not of a fairy tale but of a sacred reality. Not of needing to be loved, but of choosing to love as your most authentic self. Not of waiting to be seen, but of being so luminous, so rooted, that only those who see clearly will even dare approach. Sagittarius, this wild love is not just an arrival. It is a return. Not to someone else but to you. To the you who was never too much. To the you who didn't need to be edited. To the you who knew, even in silence, that their heart was sacred. And if someone now chooses to walk into that light and stay, not because they want to fix you, but because they finally see who you are, then maybe, just maybe, this was never about being chosen. It was about choosing yourself so deeply that the universe had no choice but to respond in kind. You are ready now, not to be rescued, not to be rewritten, but to be witnessed in your full and fiery truth. And that is the wildest love of all. Conclusion. You were never waiting, you were becoming. Sagittarius, if you're still here, it means something in you has remembered. Not a person, not a fantasy, but a truth. A fire that never left. A part of your soul that always knew. I am not here to be chosen like a prize. I am here to choose with eyes wide open and a heart that no longer trembles. This journey was never about the one who left. It was never about whether they return or how or when. It was about you. It was about the moment you realized you are not someone to be chased, nor someone to chase. You are someone to meet, to witness, to love, not for who you pretend to be, but for the raw, radiant, untamable truth of your spirit. You once wondered if you would ever be truly seen. Now you know. The real question was, would you ever let yourself be seen without the mask? And the answer, beautiful, brave Sagittarius, is yes. You have already begun. You have stood in the fire. You have loved through the ashes. You have grown not just through healing but through remembering who you are. So now say it. Not for them, for you. I, Sagittarius, do not wait to be chosen. I have already chosen myself. I open my heart, not to be saved but to be met. And I allow only love that sees the truth of who I am. If this journey echoed in your soul, like this video, subscribe to Zodiac Wisdom, and share it with the one who once carried a wild love but forgot their own name in the process. Let them hear you say, I'm not afraid of wild love anymore. I'm only afraid of living without truth. This is not a return to love. This is your return to yourself.